We're going to sit down with PFF's Trevor Sakema. We are going to discuss a variety of topics. First off, Nick Chubb, where he lies in Trevor's running back rankings, the Cleveland Browns offense for 2023, and draft guy who now does everything. Why would we not touch on the Cleveland Browns 2023 draft? All that and more coming up on your latest Locked On Browns.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. As I mentioned, my guest today from PFF, Locked On family. I am sure you'll remember the days of the Locked On NFL draft. Trevor Sakema. Of course, young Ben, who's now gone on to bigger and better things as well. Always excited to see the boys and the growth that they have. So we're going to get to Trevor here today. We're going to break down things about his running back list, talk some Nick Chubb, obviously. We're going to get to the 2023 Cleveland Browns offense, which, I mean, there's just this week, and I know everybody, the superlatives, it's 7-on-7. Guys, but we have been through this where 7-on-7 Browns OTAs offensively looked like hot, stinking garbage. The problem is if it doesn't look good. Not the problem is that it does look good. We'll also, as Trevor obviously well-versed in the NFL draft, we'll get some thoughts here on what was a difficult draft, obviously, for the Browns in 2023. When you don't have a lot of pieces to work with, you got to try to piecemeal together what you can. So we'll get Trevor's thoughts there. But Trevor, obviously, now we're going to kick it off here. And I think, and part of this is probably even Nick Chubb's own doing. Nick Chubb is unlike any other star skill player in the NFL. Doesn't talk much. There is not much substance there. Nick is not out dating Kardashians. He's not, out running the, circle of, the hierarchy in the, high society world. He's just a guy who loves the game and his life is football. Literally the questions he gets asked, you get 2-word answers. Nobody comes any further. They don't ask a backup follow-up question because even though it was only 2 words, that's all Nick's going to give you. And I think that's part of the reason maybe why he's not as regarded by some as, the player that he totally is. But Trevor, your running back rankings, Nick Chubb's ranking within all that, and what makes Nick Chubb actually stand out as the player he is for you?
Dude, I mean, he's an unbelievable player at the position. It feels like, and we can go back to the Georgia days, honestly, that he was crafted in a lab to play this position. That's what it felt like at UGA. That's what it's felt like at the NFL level. Nick Chubb, when you do the get off the bus test, if you will, you're already terrified of them, right? Anybody who's played sports at any point in their life, whether it was middle school, high school, college, intramurals, whatever it is, we all do the same thing. We look over to the other sideline and we check out who the other team has. If there's anybody that we're going to be afraid of before the game even starts, Nick Chubb checks that box every single time that he shows up to any field. And you would think, okay, here comes this big brute of an athlete running back who, he's not going to have great vision. And it's just not the case. I mean, he is, to me, the total package at running back. He gives you the strength profile. He's got really great lower body size as well. That helps him with contact balance. It helps him getting yards after contact. The explosiveness, the burst, the short area quickness, everything is so there for him physically. And then you throw in the fact that he's so smart. He waits for blocks to set up. Even though he has the ability to run into people and run them over, he understands that, hey, if I wait for my blockers to set up the way that they need to, I don't have to run into anybody. Actually, I could just keep running forever and ever. And it's just, it's so many things with him. Vision's the number one priority that I have with running backs, and Nick Chubb absolutely has it. I say in the article, when I went through the rankings, he's never graded below 80 for a PFF rushing grade in his entire career. And in fact, this past year, once again, another elite rushing grade for him above 90 on the whole season. And it was his highest career grade yet. So in a world where running backs seem to drop off a cliff and get worse when they get towards the end of their rookie deal, into their second deal, whatever it is. Nick Chubb just keeps getting better and better, man. And so that's why, to me, he's got to be number one because he's the total package.
And the thing with it is, last year obviously was the most difficult year because the whole situation where, you brought in this guy who you thought was going to be a franchise quarterback. Then you thought it was going to be 6 games. Then it turns out to be 11. So obviously early in the season, everybody is gunning for Nick Chubb because, until Jacoby Brissett beats you, you're going to make sure you take care of Nick Chubb. Mm-hmm. Then was the transition, to Deshaun Watson and understanding that the ball is going to go in the air a little bit more. And still my favorite run from last year, it was week 1 against Carolina. And now you talk about his vision and you're setting up his blocks. He's following Ethan Posick and they're about 18 yards down the field. And he's right in Ethan Posick's hip. And it was just like, well, I appreciate it, big fella, but you're holding me up now. So I just got to keep going, look, you did everything you could for me, but, and he kind of almost just gave me a little wave, like, just shut it down, bro. Cause whatever this run's going to be, I'm going to get to this defensive back before you are. It turned out to be like 28, 30-yard run. And it was just like, it was the discipline in and like, this is the way I was taught to do this. And, everybody else would have just flew past the lineman as fast as they possibly could, understanding the open yardage was there. But like he stuck with it as long as he could till he realized, like, well, all right, there's no way we're going to get caught behind now because now I'm holding up, waiting up on the center here. But it's just the way he is. And, everybody talks about the greatness of his offensive line. And look, they are good. But it also takes, just a strong-minded desire to understand, well, I got to let Joel Bitonio get there. Mm-hmm. Because guess what? I may be fighting off a tackler. If I let Joel do what he's got to do and I just step inside him, that's it. Now I go back to full gear, 110%. And, and as we know, you see a lot of defensive backs bounce off him like shrapnel. It's just the way it works. He's just a physically thick guy, but it's everywhere. It's the arms, it's no neck, it's the thighs. There's not a spot on Nick Chubb that you're willing to say, oh, let me just go tackle this guy because you're going to end up on a, basically a bad business decision.
Yeah.
But this is what, and with Nick, I think this is what's going to be different this year, Trevor, is with, the Browns obviously going with Deshaun Watson and going more to putting the ball in the air. And nothing's been done here. Look, you moved on from Kareem Hunt. You moved on from Dearness Johnson. It seems like they have some really, really high hopes for Jerome Ford. But as we've all been saying, look, which one of your 8 carries last year of Jerome Ford says, oh, we're good? So it makes you think that Nick is going to be used more. He's going to be on the field more. And obviously that's going to mean he's going to be more a part of the passing game. He didn't necessarily have to do this when Kareem was here because that was the one aspect Kareem was either even with him in or maybe even a possibility of being a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But it's not that Nick can't do this.
No, I agree with you completely. Like, I think that the soft hands part of his game is an underrated part. I think that he can give you plenty of value on third down. They just, one, like you said, like they've had Kareem and they've had other backs in the past that have been able to take up some of those responsibilities. And two, you don't want to run the guy into the ground, right? Full pun intended. So even in those duties, you probably want to switch somebody up in there for those third down situations as well. So it's not a lack of talent or ability that we haven't seen a ton from him in the receiving game or on those typical third down responsibilities. Ike has the ability to do it. And again, that's why he's the complete package. There's a lot of really great running backs in this league, right? Nick Chubb is one of them, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, like Aaron Jones. There's so many great running backs in this league. But to me, what sets, I didn't even mention Derrick Henry, which is blasphemy of me. But what sets him apart is he can truly give you top tier talent in all phases of the game. And I do think that if they want to lean more on him in the passing game and give him some more opportunities there, he is going to give them positive ROI, just like he has been able to do every single season he's been there. While you were talking, I was looking it up because I forgot what his carry load was this past year. He went over 300 carries for the first time in his career, still averaged more than 5 yards per carry. He has never had a single season in which he has averaged less than 5 yards per carry, which includes the 302 carry season that he had this past year and the 298, so almost 300 carry load season that he had 4 seasons ago. So it just, he's unbelievably efficient. He's unbelievably consistent. It just feels like no matter who's in front of him, no matter what the offensive line is, no matter what the defense does, to your point, Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb proof, if you will. As long as he is out there and healthy, he's going to be one of the best backs in the entire NFL.
And the thing is he's been the main constant of this Browns offense in his entire tenure here. There were highlights of Baker Mayfield. Other times, even in 2019, that was the first year with Odell. This was supposed to be so great. They'd be down 14-0, couldn't get anything going with Landry or Beckham, and it would be a 5-play drive. They gave the ball to Nick Chubb for 4, and all of a sudden it was 14-7 Browns. He has been the true constant presence on this offense since after the first 10 weeks when they finally realized they should trade Carlos Hyde and actually play the rookie that they thought so highly of. And obviously Nick hit the ground running from there. We're going to switch it up here, head on over to segment 2. Trevor Sakema in here from PFF. We're going to get to the thought here of the Cleveland Browns offense. Look, when you've got almost all your positional rooms in a really, really good spot, all the pressure comes on, and we're going to get to that here. Jeff Lloyd, Trevor Sakema, your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for being along for the ride. Bird Dogs. The best thing about Bird Dogs is they make you look good. They make stretch khaki shorts. They're designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing a Lululemon do, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts. They are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fix this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric. Yes, I said that right. That keeps you cool and dry all day long. The best part that I know about Bird Dog is I can never find them. My joggers, my sweatpants. I got teenage daughters. My wife, they come out of the wash. Somehow they end up in her drawer. They do not end up at mine. If you want a testament to what it is, everybody seems to love them in my house. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL and enter the promo code LockedOnNFL, all caps, no space, for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We absolutely promise you. As I said, Jeff Lloyd, Trevor Sakema here, PFF, from PFF on your latest Locked On Browns, going over the Cleveland Browns, the offseason we will get to in segment 3. We will go to the present here, obviously, as the Browns have had a strong OTA to this point. Again, look, the emphasis would be if it wasn't looking good. But Trevor, this team, in 2 off seasons now, they have made 5 moves at the wide receiver position, whether it was Amari Cooper, whether it was Elijah Moore. David Bell probably still going to be a factor here. Marquise Goodwin still a factor here. You go out and you draft Tillman, obviously in this year 2023 NFL draft. So that's 5 new receivers to the fold. Hedging down on your big investment of $232 million to Deshaun Watson. You still have you still have David Njoku. You bring in Jordan Akins that obviously Deshaun Watson had a relationship with the Houston Texans. Nick Chubb. There's just a lot going on here. And obviously this all comes down, obviously, on Deshaun Watson here. Can he get back to the form that he was? Look, any athlete who hasn't played the amount of time Deshaun Watson does, it's understandable there's going to be rust. Then you throw in the fact that it's a new city. It's a new offense, new coaches, learning new talent. You got to sit for the first 11 games. You come in for the final 6, and basically everybody's looking at you like, well, can you take us 6-0? Because if you don't take us 6-0, our season's over here, which obviously did not happen. But now you look at it and where it is here in 2023. And granted, the AFC North is loaded. The AFC in general is loaded. Mm-hmm. But the expectation is he's supposed to lead this franchise.
Look, for the 3rd year in a row now, the Cleveland Browns are one of the best teams in the NFL on paper. For the 3rd year in a row. Now, of course, Baker Mayfield was a couple of those years. That clearly didn't work out. Deshaun was terrible last season, so obviously that part of it didn't work out. But so much of the rest of the roster, I know wide receiver wasn't as good as what it needed to be, but the offensive line, you mentioned having Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt for as long as they did, having a good tight end option in David Njoku, the defensive line. Okay, they weren't as good as run defense as they needed to be, but still talent along the defensive line with Myles Garrett, of course, being the feature player there, good speed at the linebacker position, playmaking corners and playmaking players in the secondary. Like, this team has been on paper one of the best teams in the NFL. And I was actually having a conversation with Sam Monson, who also works at PFF, on the PFF NFL show. We were talking about guys who were under pressure this year, and we feel as though Andrew Berry's kind of under pressure for orchestrating a lot of this. And now you're in year 3, year 4 of whatever he's been for the general manager. And you got to see some results at this point. Like they have to play well. You can't just go, well, it's just, luck didn't bounce our way. Unfortunately, that's not how the NFL works. It's a results-based business. And for that being the case, the table is pretty much completely set for the Cleveland Browns to be good. Yes, they're in a really tough division. Yes, they're in a really tough conference. They should be one of the reasons why that division is tough, why that conference is tough. This team should be contending for playoff spots for a potential division title against the Cincinnati Bengals, against the Baltimore Ravens. Maybe the Steelers get to that point, but I do still think the Steelers are going to be competitive no matter what. Everything is there for them. And I like this receiver room now. I like the fact that Amari Cooper has somebody else to take a volume load off of him when it comes to Elijah Moore, who could do a lot for you, I think, as a slot player. And then I love the two guys who are going to be probably coming in next. Well, three, if you want to throw in DPJ, who could be a really good deep threat for you. Cedric Tillman, who I think is a fantastic possession wide receiver. And David Bell as well. I wasn't the highest on David Bell coming into the league just because he's really limited athletically. I feel as though Cedric Tillman is going to be that player that they wanted David Bell to be, this possession type of wide receiver. But Cedric's got a little bit more athleticism to him. He's got a little bit more strength to him. And I think that when, of course, you look at the rest of it, that offensive line is still incredibly solid. We've talked about the running back room. It's all there. And so Cleveland should be really damn good this upcoming season. And if they're not, man, there's going to be a lot of panic finger pointing, whether it's Stefanski, whether it's Barry, whether it's Deshaun, whoever it is. There's going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered if the Browns can't figure it out with the roster currently constructed the way that it is.
Oh, this could be a problem by week 5, which is the bye week, because obviously you're going to play Cincinnati, you're going to play Pittsburgh, you're going to play Baltimore, you're going to play Tennessee. And if that doesn't go well, then you're going to go back off the bye week, and here come one of the most physically dominant teams in the NFL in the San Francisco 49ers. So we'll learn the story early of the 2023 Cleveland Browns, and it certainly could make for a frosty mid-October. No question with that. There's been talk here, obviously. DeAndre Hopkins appears to be a popular name, and whether there's real strength to that, or a great job by a camp saying, well, he used to play with Deshaun Watson, we can kind of see if we can drive up the price there. Mm-hmm. They're already in the mentions today. Well, Dalvin Cook's released, and I doubt Dalvin Cook is willing to come in and pick up the scraps that Nick Chubb is basically going to leave on the plate when he's not on the field. But first off, does the Hopkins doing it even make sense? Because as we're talking about, there's a lot of guys here who are basically on the precipice of breaking out. And even for Amari Cooper, you're telling him, hey, everything you did last year in a really, really difficult situation, guess what? Your target share is most likely going to get cut because we bring him in here. And, I don't know if you truly want to say he's a malcontent. At times, obviously, he's shown that he's been difficult to deal with. But some of these guys have the mindset of, well, I deserve the right to be difficult to deal with because I give you such a return on investment. Is this a fire that you should even be stoking? Or when you're already 6 deep, and there's guys making plays this week who don't have a prayer of making this final 53. Mm-hmm. It just seems the system is set. And maybe they should just probably let the playmakers just go out there that they have. Hey, you can always adjust. And if you got to make a move near the deadline, make a move near the deadline.
Look, on paper, or I would say like in theory, yeah, you should be interested in DeAndre Hopkins. He's got the relationship with Deshaun Watson. That's obviously a major catalyst for getting this offense where it needs to go. I can't answer any sort of questions about whether or not Amari Cooper would be happy about another big-time wide receiver coming and taking targets away from him, but you would hope that a big-name wide receiver is just trying to win at this point. So, if you have a wide receiver room that's Amari Cooper, it's Elijah Moore, it's DeAndre Hopkins, it's Cedric Tillman, it's DPJ, it's then whoever rounds it out is wide receiver 5 or 6, depending on how many you keep on the active game day roster. That's really, really good. So, in theory, again, I don't think Cleveland's in a position where they wouldn't entertain this. Now, but the answer might be no, right? Now, me saying you don't entertain this doesn't mean you go out and you get DeAndre Hopkins no matter what. But they, like many other teams in the NFL, should seriously be considering Hopkins and basically saying, okay, tell us why this wouldn't make sense. Is it a cap reason why it wouldn't make sense? Nope. Is it because it's going to piss off chemistry? Is it because it's going to piss off Amari Cooper? Do we not think we have the right spot in our offense that he could fill. You basically have to put his name on a whiteboard, and you have to get the brain trust of the Cleveland Browns to say, tell me why this doesn't make sense. Because as of right now, we just mentioned how tough the AFC North is, how tough this division is. You don't have the luxury to look at DeAndre Hopkins and say, yeah, this made sense. But we just decided that we wanted to roll with, one of these younger guys, because you're at the point where a touchdown catch, a big catch, or whatever, or two throughout the season might be the difference between you making the playoffs and you not, because of how many good teams are in the AFC. So the margin for error is very slim this year with how good the teams are in that conference. And so you can't leave any stone unturned. Perhaps you put his name on the whiteboard and you come to the conclusion that, no, it's not worth it. But you better go through that exercise of figuring out whether that's a good reason. So
makes sense. It makes sense. And the thing is, I just don't. The problem is, and it's probably a lot to do with the second year of Jadeveon Clowney. The first year, when it was less money, incentive, you saw a whole different version. Mm-hmm. Last year, when it was 14.5 guaranteed, and you find out by week 5, week 6, I'm not in the mood. I'll just play nickel and dime today, and then basically checking out, cashing out. And I think it's just to put an investment and then to alter so many things for a player. And, there is the hand grenade factor, and basically you end up holding it and you have no pin with a player like this. And I think that's the part that probably just becomes a little difficult, for the Browns players. Is he a good player? Is he automatically become either the best or the second best wide receiver in your room? Most likely. But, there is a lot of altering for a lot of hard work that's been done over 16 months that all of a sudden it just seems like you're going to basically do a 180 and kind of change that. We'll see the way it plays out. Tennessee, if you want them, go ahead, take them, and maybe we'll get the Julio Jones vibes that we did when Tennessee made that move a couple of years ago. We're going to get to segment 3 here again. Trevor Sakema, PFF. We're going to let Trevor go into his NFL Stock Exchange hat, his former Locked On NFL Draft hat here, get some thoughts on the Browns 2023 NFL Draft class. As always, we appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen, the everydayers. You guys are the fabric on which Locked On is built. I suggest to all the new traffic, you become more like the everydayers, and the best way to do that is subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Notifications on, the shows drop, the content drops. You guys are there to absorb it. Locked On Browns, always available, always free, audio-wise, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you look at it, and I never want to say this because it's always, well, they made the trade, so you got to figure Elijah Moore as part of the Browns 2020. No, but even still, you got a great player, and I don't think you would have gotten a wide receiver with this pick they had. But they go ahead, they get the move for Elijah Moore. And at the time, it's like, great, I love Elijah Moore. We thought he was a fantastic player coming out 2 years ago. This situation, even more, I like Elijah Moore coming in here because now it's, year 1, it didn't go so well. Zach Wilson didn't look great. Year 2, it was Garrett Wilson's here. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to play the other side now, and now everything's going to go through Garrett Wilson first. And we have a quarterback that can barely find his first read, so now I'm the second read. So obviously Elijah Moore was not happy then. Mm-hmm. Then it's, oh, my God, the Holy Grail. Aaron Rodgers is coming. And then it's the, oh, hey, kid, Aaron's got his own people. So we're just going to go ahead and move you on over to Cleveland. And look, he could have ended up a lot worse situations. There's no doubt about it. Having to go play with Deshaun Watson as opposed to Aaron Rodgers, certainly not the worst fallback option. But then you go, and again, 2 years in a row. And I even said it last year before the 2022 draft. They're like, it was there one pick that wouldn't surprise you. I said corner. Corner won't surprise me because the Browns are never not in on corners. Turned out to be Martin Emerson. This year, I definitely thought they were going to draft a wide receiver. My concern was, look, I think edge, of course, this was before Zadarius Smith, defensive tackle. I think these are bigger concerns. These are bigger needs. But to go ahead with Cedric Tillman first, still found a way to get a defensive tackle, still found a way to get an edge, still found a way to get an offensive hit on all premium positions. So your thoughts here on the 2023 class, Trevor?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite classes. It really is, because when you looked at the roster, I mentioned was already one of my favorite rosters on paper. And then you throw in a lot of these names and it makes a ton of sense. I felt like Cedric Tillman was the perfect wide receiver for them. Again, I think that he is probably more of what they were wanting to get out of David Bell. I think he is a bigger, more physical, more athletic version of that possession wide receiver.
Biggest receiver in the room. That is the first calling card he brings. He's the biggest receiver in the room.
Oh, and he's got the most strength profile to him, right? So you've got the all-around wide receiver one guy in Amari Cooper. You got a really nice slot player in Elijah Moore. You got a nice deep threat in DPJ, Marquise Goodwin. And now you've got the possession guy, right? Now you've got the guy that I think can make a living with contested catches. So love that pick for them. The Siaki Ika one, I was a lot higher on Ika going into last college football season than I ended with him. His last year I just don't think was the same kind of player that he was the year before. But hey, if the one from 2021 is the real version that you're going to get of him going in the NFL, then that's a really uniquely athletic big dude in the middle, because he is the guy with that bowling ball frame. They could play as a zero tech, a one technique player who gives you a lot of great pass rush as well. He's just got to make sure that he's holding up against the run. So I like that. DeJuan Jones in the fourth, kind of just a bet to make, right? People talked about DeJuan Jones maybe being a first round pick, and I don't think the NFL was as in on him. I wonder if him dominating one day at the Senior Bowl and then just saying, nah, I'm out and I don't need to practice anymore this week. I wonder if that goes into why the NFL really soured on him.
We know it does. We know it does.
The start of that process. So, but he's still extremely talented, massive human being, huge offensive tackle, got 2 years now starting experience at Ohio State. So great bet to make in the fourth round. I certainly understand that flyer. Isaiah McGuire, I think, is going to be a good rotational defensive lineman. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, you're just taking a flyer on a quarterback who played pretty well this past year. These last two dudes are the ones who I love the value for. Cameron Mitchell, the cornerback from Northwestern, I had as a third-round grade, and they got him in the fifth round. So I had him 2 rounds higher than when he ended up getting selected. I just feel like he's a really great all-around player. He's a little bit shorter of an outside corner, but man, I thought he was feisty. I thought he was very natural. I thought he had great instincts, especially when the ball was in the air, whether his back was to the ball or whether he was in zone. I felt like he was a really, really good corner who went underrated in this class. So them getting him in the fifth round, I think, was big time value. And then Luke Whippler from Ohio State, really smart center prospect. I mean, he's the guy who pre-snap, he's calling out everything, man. I mean, he's calling out where the linebackers are. He's calling out where the offensive line is going to switch to, whether they're going to shift to the left or the right, where the rush is going to come from. He's calling out whether or not he thinks the guy's going to come in and blitz. And he's so smart about how he goes about using angles to block anybody who's kind of coming in his way, whether they're trying to overpower him, or they're just trying to get around him with speed. He's just very smart in that regard. He's got a little bit of an injury history to him. I think that's why he fell so far in the draft. He's a little bit smaller of a center prospect anyway, so he has those two things working against him. But you're getting a guy like that in the 6th round. He's just got some really, really good college tape. So overall, I think top to bottom, it was a class where the rest of the roster in Cleveland was so solidified that it allows you to take a big swing on some of these players a little bit later in the draft, guys that might be falling a little bit, like the ones that I mentioned with Ika and with DeJuan Jones and with Cameron Mitchell. And so I think that because of that, I really did like their class. I thought it was appropriate for where they are in their roster right now.
And when you speak of Ika, and this is probably, and I think the thing with Ika, and everybody talks about, the 2022 drop-off, but everybody, you always thought he was going to be more athletic than he actually tested, because he looked more athletic on tape. So I think that was something where people maybe soured a little bit. But if there is greatness in there, Jim Schwartz will find it. There's no question about that. So it could be a quick run in Cleveland for Ika. If 21 was the high point and we're plateauing from there, it'll be a quick run because it is Jim Schwartz. And DeJuan Jones, it's the same thing you can say, on the other side of the ball. If Callahan, if there's a player to be in there and there's a starting offensive tackle to be there in the NFL, Bill Callahan will get it out of him. And the best part is it doesn't have to be this year. And I keep telling people, yes, the Browns did pick up the option on Jedrick Wills, but until he plays it down for them in 2024, we don't know. Yeah, maybe they picked up the option. They picked it up. That doesn't mean he's, guaranteed that he's going to play for this team in 2024. And of course, the same thing applies to Whippler, whatever he needs to learn on the interior. And, we saw all the work that Callahan obviously did with Wyatt Teller, and, where he was able to get him to progress. And that's the thing I like. I think that they were able to bring in guys that maybe did have questions, did have, maybe, I don't want to say warts, but things that need to be worked on, but they understand who they have on staff and what they can do. And I think for Cam Mitchell and Greg Newsome, it was kind of funny because, there was a lot of talk on Greg Newsome and was he sour here? Was he not, with the whole, having maybe nickel, this, that, and the other thing. And would he say, let's go, we'll draft one of your good friends. And all of a sudden now Greg Newsome's hosting a charity softball game and everything seems to be hunky-dory here again. So it's strange and funny how those things do work out. We got to a bunch of good stuff here today. Of course, certainly, talking about Nick Chubb, and obviously, I'm not going to tell Trevor he's wrong. Nick Chubb, in my opinion, as well, is the best running back in the NFL. The Browns offense. Look, the expectation is there. The expectation is real. And I think the only thing is probably we can maybe see something where we would be dissatisfied. If you don't think this offense is going to be good, if you don't think this offense is going to score points, I do not know what to tell you. And of course, the 2023 Browns draft class. It was a slow start, a late start to the 2023 draft class. But the board kind of fell. And every now and then you get lucky in a situation like the Browns were, where the board falls and kind of lines up with your needs, and B, like I said, having players that you can bring in who may have some deficiencies, but you have the coaching staff to make it all work. He is Trevor Sikkema, obviously PFF, obviously podcast over there, part of the NFL Stock Exchange with good friend Connor Rogers. We both appreciate you speaking so highly of Luke Whippler, and if obviously those compliments you gave could be applied to any New Jersey kids, so we certainly do thank you for that. Make sure you're following at Tampa Bay Trey. One of my favorites. Trevor's been doing this for a long time. And it's always nice to see people that, are good people who put in the work, and, the opportunities come their way. Everybody asks, oh, how does it work? How does it work? Be yourself, be good, do good work, and people will find you. They will appreciate you, and you will get your opportunities. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.